Have you ever had one of those dreams where you wake up and you think, what the hell was going on? Or one of those nightmares where you know you're in the nightmare and internally you're trying to wake yourself up to get out of the nightmare? Ever had one of those? Well, why is this happening? Why are we dreaming? What's going on inside? I'm going to talk about that in this video. Let's get into it. Welcome to Write Your Own Story. If this is the first time you're here, it's great to have you. If you've been here a while, it's great to have you back. My name is James. I'm an online counsellor, hypnotherapist and life coach. I'm also an author, a podcaster and a YouTuber. So, this video, what is going on when we're dreaming? Why are we dreaming in the first place? Now, we have 5 different brain waves going on. We have alpha, beta, delta, theta, where we go into REM sleep or rapid eye movement sleep, and we have gamma. Why are we dreaming in the first place? It probably helps if I explain it like this. You have remembered everything, or you should say you have stored everything that you've ever experienced. You haven't remembered it. Now, the unconscious part of our mind where all this is stored, that's like multiple hard drives. And there's so much room in there, you probably couldn't fill it up if you tried. But the conscious part of our mind is like this little USB stick. Now, what the mind does automatically, it knows only so much data can be added to the USB stick. If you put too much on it, it'll just stop working, it'll be full, that's it. So what your mind does automatically, and thank goodness it does this, it's constantly pulling things from the small USB stick and storing it on the hard drive. Now, just because it's storing it on the hard drive doesn't mean it's rectified it. It's just getting it away from the USB stick for the time being, and it will store it later when you sleep. And what happens is your mind makes the decision about, okay, what box am I going to open when we're asleep tonight? Okay? Your mind makes the choice. You don't make the choice, your mind does. And there's multiple boxes because it's working with the unconscious or the subconscious part of your mind. Now, here's how this is policed. There's a day shift security guard for the purposes of this, and there's a night shift security guard. Now, the day shift security guard, try to say that fast, the day shift security guard is on duty now with you because you're here and you're watching this video. But when you go asleep, the day shift security guard hands over to the night duty. Now, the night duty security guard isn't as strong because it doesn't need to deal with all the day-to-day activities. That's what your day shift is for. So the night shift security guard, their sole purpose is to open a box, take something out, and change the story so you can process. That's what it's doing. That's when you're dreaming, you're processing stuff. And it might make up a bizarre scenario that has nothing to do with the actual issue, but it will change the characters. It will change the theatre of this thing. And you will process. And if everything goes according to plan, it will process, tidy things up, put it back in the box, reordered, close the box, put it back on the shelf. You wake up the next day, think, I had a strange dream last night. And then throughout the day, you will forget the processing of what was going on. But internally, something has been worked out and resolved. That's the ideal scenario. Here's where it can go wrong. If the false story, the narrative that the nighttime security guard is creating to play out this scenario, to process stuff, if the emotions are too powerful, if they're too strong, too hectic, the night duty security guard loses control of the situation and you drop into a nightmare. And that nightmare can be anything. You might be dreaming about scary monsters or spiders or aliens or taking on some giant. I don't know what it might be. It loses control of it. Now, there's a fail-safe system built in within you. What happens is, when the nightmare starts, it alerts the day shift security guard. Now, you are still physically unconscious, you're still asleep, But your day shift security guard has now been alerted and they've got the hump because that's their time to rest as well. So they enter your nightmare. They're probably quite upset with the night duty security guard because they're saying, why aren't you fixing this? Why am I being disturbed? Why aren't you doing your job? And this is what happens. The day shift security guard will try and take over the scenario. And the best way it can do that is to wake you up. And this is where you can be in a nightmare. You know you're in a nightmare and you are trying to wake yourself up out of the nightmare. Because as soon as you're awake, of course, the nightmare stops. So that's what the day shift security guard's tactic is in this scenario. Okay? Now here's where it can go wrong again. The day shift security guard ideally should stick around to make sure that you're okay as you go back to sleep, because you're probably going to be going back to REM sleep quite quick because you were already in that state anyway. So it should stick around, monitor things for a while, and when it's okay, it goes and leaves the night duty to be back in charge, and the day shift goes and rests. Here's the problem. If the day shift security guard leaves too soon, before the gates are closed and the doors are closed and the windows are closed, before it's rectified this situation, if the day shift leaves too soon, you can drop back into that nightmare. And the same thing happens again and again. Now, a clever thing that your mind does, whether you've had a dream or whether you've had a nightmare, it takes off the edges. So when you wake up, you might be thinking, wow, I had this weird dream last night. It's all a bit foggy. I can't really remember what's going on. And as the day goes on, you will remember less and less and less of the nightmare or the dream because you're meant to. Why would they go to therapy if I'm just having a few nightmares? The reason I'm suggesting this is because if you are constantly having nightmares, your night duty security guard is trying to process something that's too big for it to handle, and it's constantly losing control. It's trying to do it, but it can't do it. And the day shift is coming in trying to rescue the situation just by waking you up to stop the processing. But when it leaves, the processing hasn't been done. Maybe the night duty security guard is trying to wake you up. Let's get this thing back in the box. This is too much. Get it back on the box. Sellotape this thing down. Get it back on the shelf. Stop opening that box. Until that box is opened and resolved, the problem's still going to be there. It's a bit like having, say you've got damp behind a wall and you paint over the damp and it looks okay. And the damp comes through the paint because it's still there. You paint over it again and it comes through again. The only way to really rectify this is stop painting over it, address the damp. So this is where therapy could be a fantastic idea, and maybe you haven't considered this before. And I really would recommend it. If you are having frequent nightmares, make an appointment to see a therapist. And any good therapist worth the salt, if you were to sit down and say, I've come to therapy because I'm having frequent nightmares, and I can't really remember the detail, what the therapist will do, together in a conscious way, we go searching for the box. And we start unpacking a few things and resolving a few things in a conscious way. And that's a fantastic thing to do. Your small USB is capable of doing this. Work with someone else, work with a professional, make sure they know what they're doing. You resolve what the issues are, and all of a sudden, that thing that's causing the nightmare doesn't exist anymore because you've dealt with it. Something else I just want to throw out there, and I know we're going down the deep end a little bit, and maybe this was not what you expected about a dream video. There's a thing called vicarious trauma. Now, what that means is that you can experience the vicarious trauma is when you experience someone else's trauma and it traumatizes you. Okay, so you might get a lot of this with the emergency services, where they're constantly seeing difficult things. They can be the recipient of this vicarious trauma. Now, it doesn't have to be just emergency services, it can be regular people. like you as well. Normal people like you as well. And what happens is, if you've experienced someone else's trauma, the vicarious trauma can be passed on to you, a bit like they were one link of a chain and they forged the link which became yours. Now you're carrying the trauma of their trauma, as well as your trauma of experiencing their trauma. You see? Now, if this is happening, one thing that might be going on is you're having nightmares because you're processing your trauma and your trauma of their trauma, and this thing is not a good thing to have. The reason it's a good idea to get therapy is because if that's happened, where someone forged the link or the next link of the chain and it became yours, what you don't want to do is be forging the next link for someone else, for your nearest and dearest. So if you are having frequent nightmares, do a Google search and find a good therapist. If you'd like that to be me, my contact details are going to be down in the description. So this is just a longish video, I guess, for this. And maybe I'll off in a few different directions about why we dream and why we have nightmares. If you've liked this video or you think it might be useful to someone else, send it to them. But you can like, share and subscribe. I ask that in every single video. It really does help. It's completely free to do. And it tells YouTube this video was worth sharing the love. So if you'd like to do that, please do. The little button's there. Ring the bell, because that means every time I make a new video, you get notified. So until next time, this is James. This is Write Your Own Story. And I will say, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.